Perfect. Hi, good morning and welcome to the Cradle-to-Career Selection for Advisory Boards Committee, because we like to have long names for our committees. My name's Gavin Payne and I'm the chair of this committee. Today marks our inaugural 2024 committee meeting, which will be run according to Bagley-Keene, the Open Meeting Act as required by law. We plan to end around 1 p.m. at the latest. We could be more efficient than that. And I want to welcome the other members of this committee who are with me today. Welcome Member Gonzalez-Vasquez, Member Ohanian, Member Romero, and Member Vu. Do I see Member Romero? Okay. While Member Ohanian and Member Romero, Member Vu is taking this meeting from the Cradle-to-Career office, while the rest of us, Gonzalez-Vasquez, Ohanian, Romero, and myself, are conducting this meeting from other teleconference locations, which are reflected in the agenda and are posted in each of those locations. Excuse my delay. The purpose of today's meeting is to approve the application, the rubric, and selection process plan for both the Data and Tools Advisory Committee and the Community Engagement Advisory Board. Before delving into the review of the application, rubric, and selection process, it's helpful to provide a bit of background on the advisory boards and selection of new members and some big picture context on the advisory board demographics. I want to remind the committee that our work here needs to be within the scope laid out in the charter and the governance manual, which we will walk through during agenda item 2 in more detail. Additionally, we're joined today by General Counsel Julia Blair, who's available to answer questions that we may have on any topic related to the governance manual and our charter and legislation. So given the extensive workload ahead of us, I'm hopeful we can focus on our discussions around the big picture ideas and vision for what we want for our advisory board members and their recruitment and selection. So before we dig into the day's work, I want to take a look at what lies in front of us. In total, there are 8 items on today's agenda. Our agenda, which is posted on the C2C website, specifically notes the agenda items on which we will be accepting public comment. Today, members will be voting on 2 agenda items, and we will open the agenda up for public comment 4 times. So if I could have the next slide. I want to formally now call the meeting to order and ask that Mary Kate Cruz-Jones please call the roll.
Member Payne.
Present.
Member Gonzalez-Vasquez.
Present.
Member Ohanian.
Present.
Member Romero.
Present.
Member Vu.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Perfect. We have a full house. Now we'll move on to agenda item 2, presentation on the background of the advisory boards and an overview of the selection of new members. I want to invite Mary Kate Cruz-Jones, our Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships, to present this agenda item today. Thank you, Mary Kate, you're on.
Thank you so much. So good morning, members. I'm Mary Kate Cruz-Jones, and as Gavin mentioned, Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships here at C2C. So I'd like to refer members to the staff report that was drafted for this agenda item. If you're a member of the public and if you'd like to follow along, the staff report can be accessed on the C2C website. So at the February 28, 2024 governing board meeting, the committee charter for the selection of advisory boards committee was approved, and 5 governing board members, so thank you, the 5 of you are all here, were designated to form this committee. So your role is to finalize the selection and recruitment materials and to identify a candidate pool for governing board approval. Understanding the great workload that is ahead of us today, I wanted to just take this opportunity to set the stage for today's member deliberation, providing some background of both of our advisory boards and the selection of new members. So I'll be centering this discussion on the roles and responsibilities between both the office and committee members and breaking down the timeline of activities that will happen during this process. So on our next slide, let's take a look at these two advisory boards. So pursuant to Education Code 10865, there are two advisory boards, and they both provide input to the governing board. Data and tools is one, and community engagement is the other. Their respective responsibilities are listed here on this slide. Next slide, please. So in terms of, before delving into the roles and timelines, it's really critical to note that members of our advisory boards are appointed, by the governing board to serve in 3-year terms. So the term for all new appointments will be from 2024 through 2027. And in addition to this, a key stipulation that we should keep in mind, or you all should keep in mind, is that individuals who work for an organization or person represented on the governing board may not be selected to serve on the advisory board. And that's something that's stipulated in the governance manual. Wonderful. So looking at the role of the committee, this slide in front of us highlights the respective role of the committee and committee members during this process. So as we can see, the committee is responsible for approving and providing input on the application, rubric, and selection process, which you've come to do here today. So thank you in advance for all of your hard work and insight. And committee members are also responsible for reviewing all slating resources and scoring applicants. So that's going to come a little bit later in the process. What I want to note about this part is this is the one task that's going to be done individually. So all other tasks will be done collectively as a committee, but that slating and scoring will happen, on your own. So at our next committee meeting, the committee will determine a final slate of applicants and improve the final slating of candidates and runners up. It's really important that we remember those runners up for each advisory board. And this information will be brought to the governing board for final approval, and that will happen at our August governing board meeting. Okay, so in contrast to the role of committee, if we go to the next slide now, we'll take a look at the role of the office. So moving on to the roles and responsibilities of the office, that's us and myself. In preparation for today's public meeting, the office has provided the draft application, rubric, and selection process. Again, this is what y'all will be reviewing today. After that application period closes, the office will then provide slating resources. And these resources, I just wanted to talk over for a second, because I know we have some newer faces on this committee. So those resources will include a scoring rubric, an application packet with the submitted applications, a summary spreadsheet for member review, and a Google form to score those final applicants. So the second preparation for the second meeting there's a big resource packet, toolkit for members to lean upon. So after committee members complete the review of those materials and all these slating resources and the applicants themselves, the office will then tabulate these results of the committee scoring and provide a top scoring of applicants. So when you go into the second meeting, you'll be presented with, these are the top applicants that have surfaced. Okay, so what we're going to look at next is kind of that breaking down that timeline. So fabulous. Next slide. Thank you. So we'll start with April. Here we are today. And I do want to, there's a color coding system. There's a method to this madness. So I wanted to highlight that for a second. So purple, this is you all. This is a committee meeting. Orange, this is in reference to the application date. Green goes over committee member deadlines. So really important that y'all look at these green dates. Navy refers to the office deadlines, and blue is that governing board meeting. Okay, so let's take a look. April 12th, familiar date. It's today, you guessed it. This is our initial committee meeting. And as we've mentioned, y'all are going to take a look at that rubric, that application, and the selection process, or this selection plan, excuse me. And then You'll have that opportunity to provide feedback. That's going to come in our subsequent agenda items. And then after today, the office will create documentation to publicize the opportunity to apply. So this could include requirements for participation, anticipated activities. We'll also have the selection rubric and application form. All of this will be on the C2C website. So the office will be doing a lot of work after this meeting to put in place and implement all of the edits, should you have any, and to kind of kick off this application process. We do anticipate that the actual application will open on Monday, the 29th. And then let's start looking at May date. So the application window, as we just saw, opening on the 29th, and then we're hoping to close that application on May 17th, which is noted here on this slide. As a reminder, y'all will meet again because we do have a governing board meeting that's coming up, and that's on Wednesday, May 1st. I know it's on everybody's calendars, but since we're looking at the May calendar, worth the shout out. Okay, brilliant. Let's take a look at June. Things are going to get a little bit heavier here. So in preparation for our next committee meeting, committee members must have their applications scored no later than June 17th. So ideally, and we'll see how this shakes out, ideally the office hopes to give you all of your slating resources on Friday the 7th. That's at the latest. Hopefully we could get it to you earlier, but definitely by Friday the 7th, it should be in your hands. You'll have 2 weekends or 10 days. I like to look at it in terms of weekends. It feels like you have more time, but 10 days to review all of that, all of that information. Again, we'll want that back on the 17th because then the office is going to need to scurry to tabulate those final results to try and get everything live to see who those top candidates are. And we're hoping to have that all launched by the 21st. This will, again, give you 1 weekend to review, as well as the public, to say, hey, these are the top candidates, as we're going to be meeting again on Wednesday, the 26th. That's the committee meeting. So there's a lot of moving parts that's going to happen in June. And, you know, thank you for stepping up, members, because we're going to really look to you. And the office is right there with you in the trenches. So the last piece of this here that I want to look at is August. And that's on our next slide. Fabulous, right here. And that's when, so the committee will make those final recommendations at your second meeting on the 26th. And then again, voicing this over, it will go before the governing board because governing board has final approval of this. And that will be presented on August 14th at that governing board meeting. And then that's when appointments will be, you know, made final and official. So hopefully the governing board, you all as members of that process, will determine whether to approve the slate of candidates, and then we'll be able to offer those positions and then identify those runners up as well. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to pass it back off to Chair Payne for the next part of this.
Thank you, Mary Kate. Ever organized and color coded. It's pretty marvelous, all this data, and I know it's a lot. I haven't said this yet to my fellow members. Thank you for being willing to sign up for a lot of extra work on this one, because I remember from last year, the scoring process, there's a lot of people that come in. That's a good news issue. There's a lot of people that come in, and scoring is tough, but I appreciate you being willing to put the time in to do this work. With that though, I do want to open it up to see if there are any member questions or comments about the process or anything that didn't seem right or the color code was not quite right. You want puce instead of orange. I'm scanning.
Sounds well thought out.
Great.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Perfect. Thank you for that. Now we're going to move on, with your permission, to agenda item 3, the presentation of the Data and Tools and Community Engagement Advisory Board's demographic survey results. I want to invite Shannon Serrato, our Director of Engagement, to present this item to you today. Thanks, Shannon, you're on.
Great, thank you, Gavin. So good morning, members. Again, I'm Shannon Serrato, C2C's Director of Engagement, and I would like to talk about the 2024 Board Demographic Survey. I would like to refer members to the staff report that was created for this agenda item 3. And if you're a member of the public and would like to follow along, the staff report is also posted to the C2C website. Next slide, please. So as written in statute, Cradle-to-Career's governing board is intended to reflect the cultural, racial, geographical, economic, and social diversity of California. And in 2022, the office received a request from a Data and Tools Advisory Board member seeking the demographic information of C2C's leadership. Following approval from the governing board, the office facilitated the collection of governing board demographic information. The first year's survey asked about race, ethnicity, and gender, as well as if board members would like to share more information about their lived experiences in future iterations. All responses were self-reported and collected anonymously via survey, and that information was aggregated for the purpose of transparency and equity and posted to the Cradle-to-Career website. The office committed to conducting the survey annually, and in the September 2023 meeting of the Community Engagement Advisory Board and October 23 meeting of the Data and Tools Advisory Boards, respectfully, members agreed to expand the survey scope to include C2C's advisory boards for 2024. We issued the survey on February 9th, and we had a 100% response rate from Data and Tools with an 88% response rate from Community Engagement Advisory Board. We will post all aggregated responses from C2C's boards governing Data and Tools and community engagement to the C2C sites upon completion. And I'm going to use the rest of my time today to share results from the 2024 Community Engagement and Data and Tools demographic surveys. So we asked Data and Tools Advisory Board members to share specific or self-report on race, ethnicity, and gender. And this year, 10 respondents identified as female, 5 as male, and 1 declined to state. In terms of breakdown by race, ethnicity, and 3 members identified as Asian, Asian American, 2 as Black or African American, 1 Latina, 1 member who identified as multiracial, multi-ethnic, and 9 members who identified as white Caucasian, including white Ashkenazi and white Jewish. I would like to voice over that all responses were self-reported by Data and Tools Advisory Board members with no predetermined categories. So this year's responses do not include individuals who are non-binary, non-conforming, or transgender, nor Native American or Indigenous, with no members identifying as such. But that information is here because we hope to capture that in versions in the future. Next slide, please. This year is also the first time that we asked members to volunteer information about their lived experiences. So I really appreciated members' willingness to be open and share, as C2C's advisory boards represent the key stakeholders of the data system and the wide range of Californians that we are charged with serving. In 2024, half of the Data and Tools Advisory Board identified as first-generation college students, and half also shared that they came from low-income backgrounds. 2 respondents identified as immigrants and 2 identified as bilingual, while 5 members didn't identify with any of the named categories. We also asked members to share additional information about their lived experiences, and some shared that they were children of refugees, children of teen parents, and that they lived with a disability. Next slide, please. Turning to the Community Engagement Advisory Board, in 2024, 9 respondents identified as female and 5 male. In terms of breakdown by race and ethnicity, 3 members identified as Asian, including Asian American, Japanese American, and Chinese Mexican. 5 members identified as Latino Latina, including Hispanic, Indigenous Mexican, and 1 identified as Middle Eastern, 1 identified as multiracial, multi-ethnic, including Black and Filipina, and 4 members identified as white or Caucasian. Again, this year's responses do not include individuals who are non-binary, non-conforming, and transgender, nor Native American or Indigenous. Next slide, please. And in 2024, 11 Community Engagement Advisory Board members identified as first-generation college students, with 10 sharing that they came from a low-income background. 5 respondents identified as immigrants, and 10 identified as bilingual, with 1 member not identifying with any of the named categories. We also asked members to share additional information about their lived experiences, and some shared that they were children of parents in foster care, while others shared that they were from a migrant background, a first-generation professional from an inner city, or that they were living with a disability. We hope this information is helpful in advance of this year's selection process, and I wanted to share that advisory board members also opted to provide additional professional information, such as position, type of job, or area of expertise, to provide a fuller picture of the boards, which can be found in the staff reports. And with that ends my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Shannon, very much. And obviously, let's turn it over to member questions and comments on this data.
Just want to say I appreciate the effort. Yeah, I think it gives good context as
Yeah.
to who is currently on the board, of course, but also things that we need to keep in mind moving forward. So thank you, Shannon.
Does
Agreed.
the application have demographic information or request demographic information?
Can you repeat the first part of your
The
question?
application process to be on one of these committees, does it have demographic information requests?
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, all members and comments. We now will want to move on to agenda item 4, discussion, public comment, and possible action on the data and tools advisory board member application rubric and selection process. I want to call back up Mary Kate Cruz Jones and Angelique to Angelique Palomar, excuse me, to present this item to you today, both the application and the outreach plan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So
Mhm.
again, Mary Kate Cruz Jones here. And today, as Gavin just mentioned, I'll be co-presenting with Angelique Palomar, and very excited to have this co-presentation. So like to refer members to the staff report that was drafted for this agenda item, and then refer folks to the public to follow along on our website. So earlier today, I provided an overview of each advisory board and the selection process for our new advisory board members. As a reminder, there's 2 advisory boards, and the focus of our presentation right here and right now will be on data and tools. So it's important that we keep this in mind. This is data and tools specific. Next, we'll move to community engagement. So as we get started, I wanted to remind members that we'll be asking you for your input. And in order to kind of cement these ideas, we wanted to lay it out on the slide. So we're asking for input on the selection plan, which consists of outreach and member selection, the application, and the rubric. So at the end of this agenda item, members will vote and ideally approve of these resources. But I wanted to keep this in mind, have you all keep this in mind as you're getting presented the information. And I'd now like to turn it over to Angelique Palomar, our Deputy Director of Communications, who will present to you the outreach plan.
Thank you, Mary Kate. Good morning, members. So for this portion of the meeting, I will provide an overview of the office's intended outreach plan to promote and encourage leaders and members of the public to apply to C2C's Data and Tools Advisory Board. So our goal here is to seat a diverse advisory board that reflects and represents that of California's various populations. So to that end, we've come up with an intentional and strategic outreach plan that aims to reach California's vast and diverse population. So we'll combine a few of our communications tools to achieve this, starting with utilizing digital and social media. This is a great and accessible way to reach broader audiences across the state. So we'll develop digital communications toolkits in both English and Spanish. We'll also lean on our partners on the Data and Tools Advisory Board to further elevate within their own networks. And to better reach student populations, we intend on working collaboratively with various student groups, such as the segmental student government groups at the community college, CSU, and UC. Next, we'll initiate a targeted promotional campaign. So we'll design and develop visually appealing informational flyers, and we'll also leverage our advisory board's reach who are scattered across the state. We'll ask our partners to print and post these flyers at their respective regional public spaces, such as coffee shops, libraries, college campuses, and education offices. And so we'll make sure to include traceable or trackable QR codes for these flyers so we can assess the progress along the way and pivot if we need to. Lastly, we'll ensure that key information about the application process is accessible through our website by setting up an evergreen landing page that will update annually. This landing page will provide critical resources regarding the application process, as well as key information such as the open and close date for the application window. that's the overview of our outreach plan specifically for the Data and Tools Advisory Board. I'll now hand it back to Mary Kate.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so members, we've gotten to the where I want to start this presentation is taking a look at a snapshot of what our Data and Tools Advisory Board looks like right now. So Data and Tools, the advisory board consists of 16 public members, which include advocacy organization staff, community organization staff, and the end users of the data system. So this could include practitioners and researchers. As you could see, there will be a total of 5 vacancies that will come up this year. So come June, y'all will be selecting at least 5 members for slating and then at least an additional 2 for runners up, putting that into context. So from those 5 vacancies, voicing this over, we will have 1 in for an advocacy organization slot, or currently, I should say, currently this person is inhabiting or works for an advocacy organization, 2 community organizations, and 2 practitioners. So as members consider the ideal populations for appointment and prioritization of future candidate categories for the advisory boards, it may be helpful to point out the composition of the current advisory board. So please note the vacancies that we will see in coming years. Again, we go through this process every year, so there's a constant shift. But it's important to see who will be together at what time. And I would also like to refer members and the public to the staff report. Attachment D of the staff report, it provides a very helpful breakdown of each member, the category that they represent, and when their term will be ending. So again, that kind of provides that holistic picture if you wanted to see more in-depth board composition. So as we can see, there are currently no student members on this advisory board, and other populations that we might consider wanting to be represented might include workforce or labor development, or folks in the adult education sector. So just kind of floating that idea out there. Okay, next slide. We're going to take a look again at this vacancy analysis. So this is just, it visually depicts the impacts of the vacancies. There are 2 charts here. This is also one of the attachments in the staff report. The one on the left is the 2024 member term out analysis. And then the one on the right is 2024 board composition. So that's there for you as well. What I'd like to flip to now is taking a look at the application. So the draft application is, well, I'm going to share my screen in a moment so we could walk through it together. But this year's Data and Tools application consists of 19 questions. Questions 1 through 10 are standard, and questions 11 through 19 are substantive. So in front of members today is a red-lined application with suggested edits. This is attachment A in the staff report. And I'm going to take this opportunity next to go through that red-lined application. And again, once I finish my presentation, y'all can provide input. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start my screen share. Give me one moment.
There we go.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for the confirmation. Always helpful.
You might make it a little bit larger though.
Sure thing. Also helpful. Okay. So as I mentioned, still larger?
Still larger would be great. Thank you.
Larger, larger? Too large.
That's good.
Brilliant. Okay, perfect. So, okay, so we have in front of us attachment A. The first part of the application just kind of walks through, it provides the applicant information about the advisory board. I do want to say, note that everything that in black was approved by the committee last year. So I really would like to focus us on the red because these are new add-ons And so it's things that haven't been approved. So
Mhm.
when we go to member deliberation, if we could really start in the red, that would be very, very helpful for the office.
Yep.
Noting that the first change that we see is right here in meetings. We do have 3 advisory board meetings a year, so that's reflected here. The next change that we see is under member requirements and responsibilities, expectations. So reminding folks that in February, the governing board approved that new governance manual. So these changes are now reflective of what y'all approved in the governance manual, bringing these 2 sections in line with one another. Questions 5 and 6 are where we see our next set of red. This was included to get applicant feedback, to gather educational background information. And this could be helpful to capture if we're looking to recruit students or, specific board sets. We are thinking about in front of members at the May 1 governing board meeting is a proposal about maybe the inclusion of students. And so this would
Mhm.
be helpful information potentially to collect. Now, questions 10, 14, and 15 are also new. These came from advisory board members. Sorry, I should have also shared that. In March, both of our advisory boards met. They gave us feedback. This is noted in the staff report. The office implemented what they thought was feasible to implement in the application as seen in these red lines. And so 3 of these questions are new and were proposed by those advisory board members. So 10 is 1, highlighting that for you all. These 3 boxes that we see here in the community affiliations, these are also recommendations that were received from the advisory boards. And then 14 and 15, as I just mentioned, these are the new 2 other new questions. And the thought here was to better reflect the diversity of stakeholders. So maybe that these could be helpful additions, but again, for the board to decide. So that's a quick overview of the application. I just wanted to show you that all in real time so that we were looking at the same thing. I'm going to stop my screen share now, and I'll let the slide deck come back up. I
Okay.
do want to say, sorry, we have a few more things.
Yep.
In terms of this application, just pausing and reflecting on it, there are quite a bit of questions here. It could take about 10 to 20 hours to draft, edit, and revise. So it might be a good idea for members to think about, maybe we want to delete or simplify some components here. So planting that seed, we're going to take a look at the rubric. So the rubric works in conjunction with the application, and it highlights 4 main areas for criteria for selection. So as a reminder, when y'all get your slating resources, you'll be using the rubric to slate and help determine the prioritization. So we have community affiliation, data sets, data alignment, and actionable experience. Again, this is all was approved by the committee last year. So we're bringing it forth here. The next thought is on the next slide, and it's about self-identification. I want to talk this through. So this is a really, really important part. So part of the application process that I want to voice over and really make clear is when applicants fill out the form, they're going to self-identify, right? And we see this on question 11. So Javier, to your question about Member Romero, excuse me for the less formal call out there. This is kind of the closest we get to the demographics. By no means are they demographics, but this is the form of self-identification where they're going to say, I'm a researcher, or I'm a parent, or I'm a student. So whatever information we get back from the applicants, this is what we use to kind of slate those applicants in those slating materials. So the office obviously can't make any determinations. But if there's any folks on the line that are listening that will be applying, I want to, vocalize the fact that the self-identification piece is really, really important, because ultimately the applicants will be grouped into those categories as they check off in question 11. So today we will ask members to identify ideal populations for appointment. But in June, members will have to vote or prioritize based on the application pool that we receive.
Mhm.
And so again, we will be slating these folks based on these selection on the categories enumerated in question 11. So it could be really helpful for members today to share of these 5 vacancies in an ideal world, how you'd want to group these based upon the categories listed in 11. And then, but again, this is in an ideal world. And then just sharing this final thought here is that other lessons learned from last year, I want to surface these since we have new faces on our committee, is that when members go back to this prioritization and slating, I ask that when you do this, please follow the directions that's given by the office. We need to have very clear priority, and we are really trying to keep folks in these categories. And so if one member goes rogue, it makes it quite difficult for the office to tabulate it. And I say rogue in the nicest way possible. I know that there's a lot of information put in front of you, but if all folks kind of stick with the direction, that makes it very easy for the office. So thank you in advance for your help with that. And then also just come June, I know I've already planted this seed. If we could have at least 2 runners up for each category, very helpful in case we have any members that want to end service early. And then lastly, and this is really, really important, and Gavin already highlighted this is really hard work. There's no right way to do it. There's no perfect system or combination. So we're doing the best that we can do, and it will be great. And I really, really appreciate the hard work that you're going to be doing for us in coming months. So this is where I'm going to kind of, sorry, there's a motion here. So we should talk through that real quick. So if we get to the next slide. So the motion in front of members is to approve the agenda item. We know that we, though, might get changes to the application rubric or selection plan. So we can draft a new motion should that be necessary. The next slide, we'll go over these central questions before in front of members. Fabulous. So this is kind of carved out what y'all will center on in your deliberations here today, and what the office is hoping to get input on. But before I conclude my presentation, I just wanted to look to any members of my team to see if anybody else wanted to. Okay, fabulous. So Marianne Bates, our executive director, will share some words now.
Thank you so much. I would love to just underline one thing that Mary Kate mentioned after she showed you the red line of the application. And that is that until now, everyone who's touched this has faced an incentive to add things, but perhaps has not felt empowered to remove. So the Data and Tools Advisory Board members and Community Engagement Advisory Board members have these new suggested questions, but I just want to reflect on big picture, how long this application is going to take everyone to fill out. Last year, we had well over 100 applications. And then for us all, you especially as the committee, to thoughtfully read. So I just wanted to underscore that, and the point that Mary Kate made, that you have the authority not only to add things, but also to consolidate or cut. And my final thought on that is in terms of accessibility and people feeling welcomed and invited to apply, the quantity of questions, especially if it's not a simple like, am I a practitioner or a student checkbox, but rather a long form response of abstract concepts, might take a lot of time for people to complete, and just my opinion, might lead some people to think this is not for them. If it's too many questions with too many abstract ideas. So that's just my plug to think about you as a committee being fully empowered to cut questions in addition to your option to add those ones that were highlighted in red. So those were ideas that were presented, but it's well within your authority to simplify and cut too.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other comments from the team? Frankly, as I was reading the packet before, Marianne, the notion did come to me this is a lot. This is a long process, and we should feel free to strike as well. So let's put that in front of folks as well. So so what's in front of us today is there's a number of choice points, right? So the outreach plan, and that the ideal sort of a set of vacancy goals that we might want to have that we've seen in front of us already. The application process itself, the red line comments themselves, and whether or not we want to sort of take or strike some of the suggested new comments. The rubric for scoring that's in front of you as well, and then just to put another note in the issue, the demographic information that we request in the application is of necessity for the categories that we want to fill, and doesn't necessarily represent the demographics that we're going to seek for all committee members once they're seated and going forward. The other piece that I want to just put a pin into is Mary Kate's request and admonition for us to choose alternates. We've already had a situation in which we had to panel an alternate when a board member or a committee member was actually appointed to the board, and so we know we have to have those in place so we can make the process efficient of making sure that we have full discussion. So what I want to do now is open it up. This is a lot to take in and digest, and let's sort of walk through and go through the pieces of this puzzle as laid out. And I'd love to start, if that's okay with folks, and any comments that folks have about the outreach plan itself. It's quite detailed, quite good. I think we saw from the process last year and the number of applications we got that even then the outreach plan, which was not nearly as detailed and involved as this one, was effective. And so at least from my perspective, I'm pretty encouraged by it. But member comments, outreach plan, sort of the initial piece. Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. I know like certain parts of the state can be a little bit difficult to reach out to: North State, Central Valley, Inland Empire. Is there a specific plan on how to reach out to communities in those areas? You know, I know, like, you know, for my member institutions, we do have some presence in those parts of regions of the state, but you know, there's only so much that we can do. But no particular focus on those regions.
Angelique, would you like to respond?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we actually do have members, board members, advisory board members from the Central Valley, from those regions. The only areas that we are lacking are in the north above Sacramento, so Shasta, Humboldt, Mendocino. That is something that we are considering, but you know what, we're tackling where we have footholds in at this moment, and so that means we'll focus on the Central Valley first. And then once we have a little bit more of our footing in, then we can figure out how we can do outreach up. It's just a little bit harder in the north since we don't have a foothold up there just yet, but we have been holding community conversations where folks are voicing like, yeah, we do need to reach out to the folks up there. Just figuring out capacity wise, how we'll be able to do that. But yes, that is absolutely on our minds.
Great, thank you. Just a commentary, we can take it offline too. I have a couple of suggestions. Obviously, there are some CSU campuses up in the northern part of the state that, and I'm sure Tom has members, sort of member campuses or satellites perhaps up in the northern part of the state. And then I have some other suggestions that I'll share with you later on, having to do with the K-12 space and county superintendents and stuff.
And community colleges have quite a few.
Oh, indeed.
Up there as well, Feather River and whatnot, Shasta.
Yeah, I would love to take it offline and discuss further.
Great, good point. Ana Luz.
Yes, governing member Ana Gonzalez Vasquez. I wanted to ask a question around language. I noticed that the toolkit will be available in English and Spanish as well as the application. Have folks considered adding additional languages as well? to make it more accessible for other folks?
You know what, that we have considered making or translating the forms in other languages. Like we have our additional fact sheets in other languages. Right now, we're focusing on Spanish speaking communities because these is our largest populations here in California. And so that's the primary reason. Again, we're beholden to capacity issues here in the office. And so we're just trying to make it doable for our team here. So focusing on Spanish and English first. Once we build out more of our capacity and we have more hands, then, you know, we'll be able to focus on expanding other languages.
I just want to add another piece of information. We regularly survey folks to ask where their native language is and what they would prefer to see, and overwhelmingly Spanish is number one. We also translate our application or many of our materials into simplified Chinese. And so if there is a need, if we hear from folks that they would like an application in other languages, we will do so. We have interpretation services on tap. We talk to them weekly. So I think if that changes, we will absolutely update the rubric, but just stating the folks that we have asked and we've heard from, resoundingly, it's been Spanish, but I do hear the need to expand. But we are actively engaging with folks to make sure that we are not missing folks who may need additional support.
Thank you for adding that, Shannon.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other comments or questions about the outreach plan piece? All right. Seeing no other hands raised, let's move on to the second one, sort of the ideal populations for prioritization, right? So the candidate categories, this is that topic, sort of the, and I refer you back to the document that says what our vacancies look like, and some other comments that other folks have made. Obviously, let's open it up to the group to see what their comments might be, recommendations, ideas around this issue.
Yep.
I don't see a lot of hands raised, so I'm gonna, as people are consolidating their thoughts, I'll think about my suggestion. The judging from and thank you, by the way, for giving us sort of 3 years of what potential vacancies would look like, because I guess that's great context to think about it. The vacancies that you've identified, at least from my perspective, would be the vacancies that I would want to replace. The only caveat I have there too is the sort of the teaser from you, Mary Kate, about whether we should find somebody from the workforce space, as we're having increasing conversations along those lines, and whether one of the vacancies might be from a background like that. I mean, I'd love to see what folks' reactions might be on that one.
Yeah, I'd be remiss not to support that. You know, as far as the workforce, and you know, they just could have crossed so many of the populations in the other systems, be it adult ed, 12 out of school, and so on. So I agree with that, and you know, perhaps this is going back a little bit to the outreach strategy. You know, I believe with that, we outreach into the workforce community, let them know.
Oh, very good point. Very good point.
You know, and that's probably on me as a member, not letting my world know this is you. This is you. This isn't UCs, community colleges, CSCs, and K-12. This is you. You know, so I think that's something that perhaps can be incorporated into the outreach strategy.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's on all of us to speak to all of the issues here, not just you to speak to the workforce per se. But I think you're right. The question there, and I'm interested to know what people think about which of the sort of the two existing vacancies that are coming, the community organization or the practitioner one, would be the one that we would want to perhaps detail to the workforce issues. Any suggestions, recommendations?
You know, I do like the thought of a practitioner, you know, because they find themselves often in meetings with cross systems.
Mhm.
The practitioner.
So you would emphasize the practitioner slots over the community organization slots in this one?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'm
I have a hand raised from Marianne. Sorry, go ahead, Marianne.
Just a quick clarification, the way the application is currently structured, workforce is a subset of practitioner. So if you check the box practitioner, then you can check K-12, higher ed, and you can check workforce development is what we currently have it labeled as. When you select research advocacy or community organization, you don't have an opportunity to select what area you're focused in. So the way the application is currently structured, it'll default to having people who identify as workforce development be in the practitioner category.
That's right. That's right.
So we could modify that, but that's kind of how it currently shakes out.
Or we could just specify within the practitioner category, we're seeking specifically one workforce person and one to another category, subcategory. Does that make sense? Okay.
And that's what you could decide when you're in the rubric, right? In the same way
Yeah.
that you could say we want to reserve one seat for a student, you could decide we really this year want to prioritize a practitioner who has a workforce background.
Yep. I think that's a good idea. Annalise, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the workforce development, so I wanted to raise that. But thank you, Mary Kate, for raising that. I also think that students should be prioritized as well. Definitely folks that are involved in or have experience using data sets, I think would be really appropriate, and we can benefit from their experience as well.
Are you making a recommendation for our deliberation?
Yes.
Okay. And would you and I'm assuming students aren't in the practitioner bucket either. We'd have to do a separate bucket for that, obviously. Reactions from others. Okay, so for those who are sort of new for the way I tend to run meetings, my general default is silence is assent. So if anybody objects, then I think we sort of move on with that. So how would we configure that? We could sort of in our own sort of deliberations and rubric, we could identify one vacancy for the advocacy organization, one for community organization, one for student, and then within the practitioner vacancies, sort of specify one that we prefer to have come from the workforce space. Does that make sense to folks?
I have a question.
Yeah.
For students, just thinking of our, the demographic information, how we utilize it. Like for student, and then elaborating a little further by saying something to the effect of underrepresented populations from regions that actually have an enormous number of people that are, struggling with their skill attainment level, educational attainment level, and so on. Would that be appropriate to add just one more little qualifier? Just to ensure that, we get somebody that kind of is a voice.
Yeah. I totally understand and totally agree. I don't know if there's any, if we have any issues in terms of sort of jeopardy with how we have that specified or how we have the question
I've been sitting here struggling with
spelled out. Yeah, I know exactly. Same thing.
Initially thinking about how we, ensure some, culturally competent kind of perspectives, and then looking maybe it's just a data point to our outreach strategies. If in fact outreach is effective, we're going to see application pulls from all segments about, and then if in fact we're not seeing it, then we revisit our outreach strategy. Perhaps that's how
That's,
we,
I think, right. Well, so that feedback, I think we'll need no matter what, anytime. Perhaps one way to sort of figure this out and have us be able to deal with it is so in our processes for scoring and holistically, I think we can glean from lots of the stories that people tell in the application process, whether they might be appropriate or not, based upon what you're talking about.
right?
Marianne, you have your hand raised. You're muted.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Question 13 on the Community Engagement Advisory Board. Application does have an opportunity for people to share their lived experience.
Yeah.
So that's, and we need to cross-reference whether that's also in the data and tools when I don't believe it's quite framed that way. But that is an opportunity that might give people an opportunity to speak to the lived experiences that Member Romero is referring to.
Great.
Just for the record, I was fine with Javier. I didn't need a problem doing that.
All right. That sounds perfect. I think I'd outlined the vacancy issues earlier. Does anybody have an objection to those as specified?
So can you repeat that for me as I'm
Glad
trying
to.
to come up with, we have
Glad to.
one spot for an advocacy, one spot for practitioner, one for student, and under community
Slightly different.
workforce.
Yeah, slightly differently. At least as I articulated it. Glad to
Okay.
have people correct me or change it. One advocacy organization vacancy, one community organization vacancy, one student vacancy, and then within the two in practitioners, have ourselves work towards getting there to be one person in the workforce from the workforce space.
Great.
In that, does that make sense to folks? And again, silence is assent. Thank you for that. Let's go on now. If we could too, please, the red line portion of the application process. Obviously, I think we have to accept that we're doing 3 times a year. The detail around the paperwork and training we need to and will want to accept. I want to sort of turn to the application questions 5 and 6 as proposed as new to see what people's reactions to those are. Tom.
Thank you. So question 5, if we're open to perhaps trimming some of these questions down a little bit. Question 5, I'm not quite sure if there's a need for that question. And then question 6, I assume this is asking whether the person is currently a student or not. Do we just want to ask if the person is a college or university student instead of having this little bit more complicated checkbox?
If helpful, the voiceover here, I think what we were trying to get at is where they are at in their educational journey, and trying to be able to pinpoint that. Just because with the community engagement, there's been different thoughts of, what a student is and means. And so trying to ascertain where this person is in their educational journey, if that's helpful. But happy to get folks' input and wordsmith.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think Tom's point is well taken, that perhaps 5 and 6, if worded differently, are duplicative. My sense is because there's also sort of programs and pathways that have actually specific names in a different venue depending on what you're doing, whether it's in K-12 or whether it's in the post-secondary system. And so I would worry a little bit about confusion in that space. I'm wondering if we can say sort of if a student where are you in your journey, right? I'm a senior in high school, or I'm just beginning my community college work, and or that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I would even wonder if just that to that question about your own journey, your experience, if the student having something kind of civil with there, because to Mary Ann's points earlier, being mindful of, having a narrowing effect, instead of,
Yeah.
we may say, maybe, anticipating where's this going, what's this question imply. So maybe it just getting, if you're a student, elaborating on your experience as far as, your journey. And I'm with Tom and yourself regarding 5 and 6. I kind of thought it may have a narrowing of that.
Yeah, I agree. Anybody else? Does that, so Mary Kate, is that sort of sufficient direction for you that we can do it without having to convene again or edit or do anything along those lines?
Sure. So if I'm reading or hearing correctly, we're nixing 5 and then wordsmithing 6.
Correct.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Can I offer a suggestion?
Yes, please.
So, would we be able to include 6 or in 11? So if someone marks student, can we ask, where are you in your educational journey?
Yes.
So instead of having or leaving 6, add that as a subset question for 11 if someone marks student.
Oh,
Wonderful.
that's a great idea. How very efficient.
We'll drop the mic moment on
Oh, that was easy. Anything else?
I have Mary Kate in the back of my head. Like, make it easy. Make it easy. So I'm trying to do
Thank
that.
you. That's perfect. That's perfect. Very much. Very good. All right. So, and I think any in the sort of in question 11 too, any other comments about sort of the last 3, dual enrollment, undocumented, or adult education?
Question, Gavin?
Yeah, please, Tom.
So this is those 3. Well, I'd like to jump back to number 10 whenever
Certainly.
that's appropriate. But since you
Yeah.
brought up question 11 first,
Yeah.
I see those are subsections or sub questions of practitioner. Is that asking if the person is working in a dual enrollment capacity, working with undocumented students and working with adults?
Yes.
Or are you're asking specifically those types of students?
My assumption was that the practitioner was the former, as you were describing it, someone who works in adult education, not someone who's attending as an adult.
Got it.
Is my assumption correct, Mary Kate and others?
Okay. For the adult, I'm sorry, I'm nitpicking.
Sorry.
But I mean, working in higher ed and policy, there are specific terms and definitions that are used. Do we want to use for adult education, do we want to use non-traditional learners instead? Or non-traditional students instead of adult education or adult education? So it captures a bit broader. It captures military students, students that are also in the military and also or former military. I know there's like some crossover, but adult education seems a bit specific to a certain type.
Yeah, I would
and certain definitions. I think that's exactly right. I'm sorry, Harper, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I do think we should keep adult education. That is a very unique, specific system in our state. So $568 million system is a dedicated.
Yeah.
It does warrant standing alone. We do want the practitioners that focus on that population, but having a broader category added to this as non-traditional. For others that was, we're not thinking about, like Tom started laying it, I think leaving that opening, I think this would be okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think for me, adult education should stay.
Okay, I hear that.
I mean, I
Um,
don't want to add another, box. Can we use adult education / non-traditional, or is that not, oh, no, not appropriate to conflate the two?
I just, Tom, I'm the argumentative, but that system often feels undervalued and kind of like, kind of put in the zone. So I think it would send, maybe I'm reading too much to it, but I do think it would send a message to that system. That's, I think leaving them alone, having them as a standalone, I think is
and to your point, Tom, I don't know that I would. I like your clarification. I don't know that I would be particularly concerned about adding one more box in terms of non-traditional learners. Do we want to say non-traditional sort of learning environments / military / I mean, help me with the wording on that.
I'm comfortable with non-traditional
Mhm.
students.
Okay, non-traditional students. All right. Other folks? Okay, that's an add. And if it's all right, yeah, Tom, I'm sorry, I skipped over question 10. I'm back at it for you.
I'd be interested in hearing or knowing, the thinking behind this question. Is it, I think to Mary Ann's point earlier, would having certain questions kind of restrict or constrict people's interests? And I'm not quite certain the need for this question. I mean, it's not a job interview. They don't necessarily need to, have worked with boards before, and that was never a consideration in last year's, discussions. And, I mean, by posing this question, right, you kind of make that person feel like, oh, I need to have had experience working in the board before I even bother applying. So, I'm not quite certain if this is needed, especially if we want to get more students and families involved. It seems like this question might be off-putting for some.
+1 for me on that. I agree. Mary Ann?
To provide context, this was one comment from one member of the Community Engagement Advisory Board. And it was made in the context of, when you have boards like this, it can be helpful to have people who know how they function. So it was not part of a kind of large consensus of the entire board or something that was mapped out in detail. I would describe it as one comment that one person made in a meeting.
Okay. Would anybody object if we struck at number 10? With that context in mind. Okay, thank you all. Now moving on to discussion, the next ones, 14 and 15 are new and very involved. I certainly have opinions myself, but I would love to hear from folks about what they think about those.
Yeah, 14. This will have a, this is daunting for some of you that, so if this seems like this would be a requirement, to be considered, that you would be involved in the administrative program. So I wonder if that's something we want as a requirement to be in this process, then talk about that. But if it's not a requirement, I'm not, I do not think 14.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom?
Yeah, I would agree with Javier. I'm not seeing the need for 14 and 15.
Yeah.
But if I can go back to number 11 real quick again.
Yeah.
For the subsection of regional level of focus of work. I know this was from last year, but perhaps, we can consider rephrasing county. It just seems like why county? When, can we just put local? Because if you say county, that's very specific. But using the term local might be a bit broader, might be regional. The person can look, can be working on a regional level. The person can be working on, a city level or multi-city level, but county is very specific border.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I wonder,
Reactions?
yeah, I agree with that. A whole regional is supposed to transcend governmental jurisdiction, it's supposed to be organized by something else. And so I agree with that. And could we add, this is an add request, like rural, urban, something to that effect?
Good question. Are people comfortable with this defining the places where they're sort of working and living as rural or urban?
I think that's a good thing to have representation on. That's what you're asking.
Yeah, no, I have no objection to it per se. I want to make sure that we don't get any sort of noise in the system when people themselves are not sort of identifying themselves as sort of rural, urban. Do we add suburban and all of those sorts of sort of manifestations of placehood that we have in various levels of government?
Good point, Gavin, because just doing like on the workforce side, rural is not as straightforward.
Right.
California, rural in California is urban somewhere else, and then
Yeah,
micro regions consider themselves rural and they live in some place that you wouldn't consider, so on. So you can open this up for a level of scrutiny that we may not want to do so. Going back to initial conversation, you might just want to see how successful we are in outreaching such people.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Javier. Marianne, you have your hand raised.
I have an operational question that
Yeah.
I think as you as a committee, when you think about geography, big picture, what is it about that you would most prioritize when you say, we should make sure we have this kind of variety on the board? For example, earlier you were asking questions about the North State. So would you want this question to just say statewide, Bay Area, Central Valley, Inland Empire, North State, whatever? We could have 5 or 6 categories. Where what you're really focusing on is where's the regional focus of this person's work? Would you care the most about saying, yeah, we've got some folks from the Central Valley. Yes, we have some people from Inland Empire, where that's the focus of their work, more so than where they live necessarily. Because we don't want to, ask people to reveal where they live.
Right.
In detail. It's like, where's the focus of your work? And you could have those regions listed. Would that be more informative than this kind of rural urban thing, or county versus city versus, other jurisdictional level? Is it that region that you care most about? Or is there some other aspect to like either level of work of county or city or rural or urban that you care most about?
No,
Thank you. That's a great question. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's each region, just as you've initially described it, is what's important.
Yeah.
Rural or urban, it's because that's the diversity is the various perspectives is what we want, and one of the makes our state so wonderful is that diverse geography. We have very unique perspectives within those regions that's unique to those regions and want them in the discussion.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's an artful suggestion, Marianne, too. I think we would sort of keep a statewide and then say, here's a list of the accepted regions in the state, and click this box. I think that's a wonderful idea. Anybody have any comment or reactions or issues with that?
I like that idea.
Thanks, Tom, and thank you for doing that. I was trying to keep people off of the black part and onto the red part, but I think that was a marvelous suggestion for the application itself. If we could we go back to 14 and 15? What I was hearing from folks was that there was not necessarily an urgency to use either of them in the new process.
Yeah, that was my suggestion.
Okay. I also think that sort of question 16 in general, if answered in an artful way by an applicant, could capture much of what they were trying to get at, perhaps with 14 or 15. In some ways as well. So do I sense that there's agreement that we strike those two new suggested questions? Perfect. Wonderful. Okay, and then, so that's it for the application process. Let's move on ourselves to the rubric process.
Can I summarize what
yes,
I believe
ma'am.
the changes are?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So I have that the application is going to be amended to remove proposed questions 5, 10, and 14, and then specified amendments to Q6 and Q11.
I
And
think it's slightly
removal.
different. I think we're striking 5 and 6, and then we're adding into question 11 a student, excuse me, a sub notion on the student component of question 11 about where they are in their journey. And then the regional level of focus of work, we're saying we're keeping a statewide box and then a regional set of boxes.
Okay, and just
And
what I
go
think
ahead.
I'm going to do after you guys get through the rubric is repeat all the amendments
Yeah.
before you guys make a motion so that we're all
I think
clear.
that
And
I
it's
think that would be fabulous. Thank you.
great.
We're also striking both 14 and 15 suggested new questions.
And
Okay.
then there was the addition of the non-traditional students.
Correct. Under the practitioner heading below adult education.
And deleting 10.
And deleting 10, exactly.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that.
One
Okay,
more
rubric.
Apologies. One more
Yes.
clarification. This was
Yes,
for
ma'am.
the Data and Tools Advisory Board application. There's
Correct.
one new question 17 on community engagement. Are we separately looking at the application for community engagement? as a-
Yes, we are.
Continue. Apologies.
No worries. Rubric. Any additions, deletions, corrections, modifications to the rubric document, which is attachment B? Seeing none, we can move forward on that piece. All right, so now, Julia, thank you for your kind offer. I think we've attacked each of the items and we've sort of run them to ground and how we want that to move forward. Can you summarize, please, for us what the motion would look like?
Okay. So first I'll read what I'm suggesting as a motion, and then I'm going to capture what I believe are the changes so that it's in the
Great.
record.
Great.
So I believe the motion can be moved to approve the application, rubric, and selection process plan presented in the staff report as amended by the committee to prioritize specified representation and to change and or remove questions on the application as specified by the committee.
Good.
And the reason I've used the word prioritize is so that it gives us flexibility if, for example, we don't receive any student applications, something like that.
Fair. Yeah, fair. Thank you for that.
Okay, and then let me figure out where to put this motion into the run of show so that it can be presented. Apologize, we're doing this in real time. Okay.
We could just put, can we put up a live slide?
Yes, that's what I'm getting it to our team so that they can do that.
Okay.
Okay,
That's the
and then to specify those changes that I just read were made in the that are going to be made in the motion, we're going to specify prioritized representation as followed: 1 for an advocacy organization, 2 practitioners, including 1 for workforce, 1 student, and 1 community representation representative.
Mhm.
Okay, and then the changes to the application are to remove questions 5, 6, 10, 14, and 15, and to amend question 11 to add specificity regarding where a student attends, and to add under practitioner non-traditional students, and to change under regional, adding, was it specific regions in the state of
Yeah.
California? Okay. Does that sound correct to everybody on the committee?
Yes, it does. All right, can we put up the motion, or do we want to just, oh, Angelique's about to do that. Thank you so much. Here it is, as voiced by Julia. Can I have a motion? Can I have someone move this, please?
So move.
Thank you, Tom. Second?
Second.
I can second.
I heard Liz first, so she gets the credit. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. It is time for us to then open it up for public comment. Mary Kate, you know the drill. Let's do that process now.
perfect. So with the motion second, we're going to be opening it up for public comment. Please note that it's going to be limited to this data and tools agenda item 4. Before we open it up to folks on Zoom, if we could just do a quick round robin, confirming that there's no public comment here in Sacramento, but Chair Payne, Member Gonzalez-Vasquez, Member Ohanian, Member Romero, if anybody, folks can stay silent, but anybody raise your hand if you have public comment at your space. Hearing none, we'll move to our virtual folks via Zoom. So if there's somebody on the line that would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please raise your hand. If we get more than 10 folks, we'll limit the time. I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time. I'll give it one more second. And we will be closing public comment on agenda item 4. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. There being no public comment and we've had full deliberation. Mary Kate, are you going to call the roll?
Happy to. Member Payne,
Aye.
Member Gonzalez-Vasquez,
Aye.
Member Ohanian,
Aye.
Member Romero,
Aye.
Member Vu.
Yes.
Okay, with 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, everyone. Now we're going to repeat the process, but hopefully we can do it a little bit more efficiently since we've made a bunch of decisions about previous things that are in there. For the public, now we're moving to item 4 in the agenda, discussion, public comment, and possible action on the Community Engagement Advisory Board member application, rubric, and selection process. I want to again invite Mary Kate Cruz Jones and Angelique Palomar, to present on this one. And
right.
if what you're saying is predominantly the same as what you said before, you can say ditto.
Perfect. Yes. I do want to do a quick time check as it's 12:26 and we're hoping to get out of here by 1. So I will be as brief as possible. We're going to go over the exact same things now with the community engagement focus. So I can happily here pass it over to Angelique. But no, at the end of this, we're going to talk about the plan, the application, and the rubric. Angelique, on
Right.
to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Kate. And much of this will look exactly the same because it is. So this will look very similar and will mimic that of the Data and Tools Advisory Board Outreach Plan. So we'll be using digital social media to targeted promotional through informational flyers, as well as provide accessible information on C2C's website. The only difference is that we'll rely on our partners on the Community Engagement Advisory Board to spread across their networks in the state. So 2 parallel tracks, same outreach plans, same target audience, but relying on each respective board members on the 2 advisory boards to disseminate the information.
Marvelous. Thank you.
Okay, so vacancy will look different as it's a different advisory board. Apologies.
Yep.
Here, then I'm seeing the word data and tools, but this is for community engagement. So I do want to confirm that. So for the community engagement vacancy analysis, we are looking for 4 new folks this year. We'll have 4 folks terming out. So we'll see a loss in advocacy organization, 2 community organizations, and 1 practitioner. So as members consider the ideal populations, again, this helpful information can be found on attachment D. And populations that you may note that could be included that might be helpful for community engagement work might include workforce labor development, again, tribal representation. This is something that we had uplifted last year as well, and then maybe folks in the educational sector. The next slide is again that visual depiction of the 2024 vacancy analysis, with the left being members terming out, the right being overall composition. In terms of the application, which we'll see on the next slide, it's a very similar application. The one thing that I would like to highlight the difference is there was the addition of 1 additional question. Again, this is what we got from members, and that's, I want to turn your attention to question number 17. Other than that, we have identical applications here, so we don't need to go over that again. And then looking at the rubric, again, different advisory board, different selection criteria. This focuses on community affiliation, community ambassador, or actionable experience, soliciting input and communicating needs and concerns, and student and educator tools. So this is what the committee had come up with last year. And the last slide that I want to look at is just that self-identification, which y'all have caught the gist of this. So again, looking for input and feedback here. The motion in front of members, which is where I'll end my quick little presentation here, is potentially, ideally, y'all will give your blessing on, if we could get to the next slide, please, the rubric, the application and selection process. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Chair Payne. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Wonderful brief summary. Let's turn first to the to our goal for decision making, to our goals for what the vacancies are and what our priorities are around those vacancies. Can I impute from our previous discussion that folks would like there to be a student as part of the priority in this activity? And in that instance, we would have 1 vacancy for each of the 4 categories: advocacy organization, community organization, practitioner, and student. Does that seem fair?
I agree.
Perfect. Thank you. And now turning ourselves to the application process itself. We've already made decisions around the additions that are made in the draft part of it, the 3 meetings, the required paperwork, all that kind of stuff. We have made decisions on the previous application with regard to question 5, 6, and 10. And then made some changes in the practitioner side of the equation. Can we stipulate that we're going to accept all those previous changes to this one, and then focus our conversation right now on the new proposed question 17? Is that a comfortable place for folks?
At least for me.
Sorry,
Seeing no
Gavin.
Yes, go ahead.
If I had missed it, did you already go, I feel like, did you already go over the categories? The 4?
Yes,
Okay, can you voice that? It's keeping 1 advocacy, 2 community, and 1 practitioner. I feel like I didn't hear that right.
correct. We have 4 vacancies and we have 4 sort of priority boxes, and we're keeping 1 in each. 1 vacancy, community organization 1, practitioner 1, advocacy organization 1, and student 1.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense? Okay. No
It
problem.
does, it does.
All right.
Just to clarify, sorry, we currently have 2 students on this advisory board. So you wish to reserve a seat for a 3rd?
Well, now, I was
Just
just
to
trying to
clarify that.
consistent to our conversation, but your point is well taken, Marianne. Reactions? Okay, I'm going to say seeing none. We'll keep it the way we've just agreed to. So yes, a 3rd, if we could, please. Now, obviously, this is a prioritization for us, and if we in our process decide that there's an overarching reason to put 2 community organization folks in, we can make that decision. If you would like absolute clarity around that, then we probably should reopen it as a conversation to the group. Folks? Student yay or nay? Student option yay or nay?
I agree with the student, but I would actually advocate for a community organization to increase the number. Because practitioners, there's already 5. And this is a community engagement. So I think increasing the number of folks that represent community organizations would be a good thing.
Reactions? I like that idea.
So do I.
I like that as well.
Okay. So then apologies for me if I have sort of railroaded us into a place where folks aren't comfortable. Let me see if I have this right. I didn't hear any objection still to having a student as a priority member, but there is now a suggestion to have 2 vacancies in the community organization and 0 vacancy or zeros from the 0 people from the practitioner column for this move or for this committee going forward. Does that seem all right for folks?
I'm okay.
Right. Good. Thank you. And thank you for backing us up on that, Marianne and Annalise. I appreciate that. Now let's go, if we could please, back to question 17 in the application. It's new. And get a little bit of context around it, if we could, please. How and where did this come from for us? Does anybody remember?
This is question 17, where it came from?
Yeah, where it came from. Exactly.
Yeah, so part of March 20th Community Engagement Advisory Board, they had 2 members work offline. That's where we see the addition of questions 14, 15, and 17. So this came from a community engagement member.
Okay. Before I make assumptions that I shouldn't make, are folks still comfortable with striking questions 14 and 15 as we did in the previous application?
I am.
Okay, good, thank you. Now deliberation on 17. Well, then perhaps I can ask it a different way. Does anybody feel particularly strongly that we should add question 17?
I don't feel strongly that we should add it, and I'm even wondering the value of having it. No one seems to our process, our structure should ensure the outcome, not the applicant.
Yeah. Do we glean any new information that's really useful in our scoring process from 17?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with taking this out. I'm not, I'm more interested in the experiences that the applicant has rather than what they think or how they think things should be done.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think it's aligned with 13, at least the second half of the question. And I like 13 better.
Yeah, I agree. And it's consistent. We've used it
Exactly.
before. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it talks about their lived experience as well.
Yeah. All right. So with no objection, we will strike number 17 as well. Okay, moving on there from that to the rubric. Does anybody
Gavin,
have
can I
any?
jump in again? I apologize.
Don't worry.
Are we making the
worry.
same change? Are we removing questions 5, 6, and 10?
Correct.
And then are we making the
We're
same
making
changes to
conforming
11?
changes, right?
Yeah.
We're making conforming changes to all the others. The only additional change with regard to this application is we're also striking question 17.
Great.
Thank you for clarifying. Moving on to the rubric for folks. Any question, comments, issues, concerns with the rubric? Seeing no hands raised, seeing none, I'm going to assume silence is assent once again, but I want to make sure I'm not railroading anybody, so I'll let folks sit with it for a few more minutes.
Apologies, Gavin.
Yeah.
I had a thought that I forgot to voice over, not to put a total wrench in this. But here I am. One more thought that is not redlined on this application that the office had the thought to add was we're looking at 2025 date. So potentially adding tentative date to the application under expectations when we talk about meetings. We know that all of our new members will have to undergo an orientation process. And we have potential dates for the 3 advisory board meetings in 2025. So adding that to the application, we just thought would be a, good practice.
I think that's a marvelous idea. Anybody else have an objection to that? As long as you specify, because things are going to have to move and change, as long as you specify that the dates are tentative.
Tentative, right.
Okay. Thank you. All right. My suspicion is that we have had sufficient time to digest the rubric piece of it. Does anybody have any objection to moving on? Fabulous. Okay. Is it possible, Angelique, to put up the slide that we had before? Because I'm assuming that the bing. Thank you so much.
So
So
before
now,
you take the motion, let me summarize all the changes just so that
yes, ma'am.
we all are in agreement. So we're going to prioritize representation as follows: 2 community members, 1 advocacy organization representative, and 1 student. And then on the application, we're going to have conforming changes to all those in the DTAB application with the addition of removing question 17 and adding tentative dates of meetings to the application.
2 each, yes. Perfect. Thank you. Can we have a motion?
So move.
Thanks, Javier. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Don.
I'll go ahead and read the motion so that we just have it verbally
In the record, thing in the recording. Thank you so much.
Move to approve the application, rubric, and selection process plan presented in the staff report as amended by the committee to prioritize specified representation and to change and/or remove questions on the application and to add information on the applications as specified by the committee.
Thank you. I think it's captured. All right. So we have a motion and a second. It's now time for us to take up public comment. Mary Kate.
Wonderful. So we'll be taking public comment on this agenda item. Please note that it's limited to agenda item 5, community engagement. So again, we have no public comments here in Sacramento, but looking toward members, folks can chime in if there's anybody with them needing to comment on this item. Hearing nothing, we will turn towards Zoom. So if there's anybody on the line, I'm giving you time right now to raise your hand. Okay, I'm seeing one hand raised. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow this individual to talk. As a reminder, you have 2 minutes for your public comment period. And then at the 2-minute mark, we will ask for you to wrap up your comments. All right, Pat, I'm going to allow you to talk right now.
Okay, I think I unmuted myself.
Yes, you are unmuted.
Thanks. So thank you for the opportunity to attend and listen in. I am wondering if I'm interested in applying, but I'm not exactly sure which position I would serve best. Am I able to talk to somebody before applying, or might my application be considered for more than one of the vacancies, or would it have to be specific to one? Would my application have to be specific to one? Is that too much of a personal question, or is it okay to ask?
It's okay to ask. You can talk to any board member, any of us, ahead of that time. We can also, if you reach out to the office, they can also connect you with members of the committees and the boards and the advisory boards themselves now, so you can explore a little bit more deeply what you might want to have an affinity for, what you might want to do in that instance. We can absolutely facilitate that for you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if my time is up. I'm wondering, I'm out in Monterey County. Are any of the current members here present from this area that I might be able to connect with?
In this meeting right now, I do not think so, but I don't know about the demographic makeup of the existing boards themselves, specific to Monterey County.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Pat, I'm gonna mute you now. And then if helpful to voice over, if you want easy, there's your time ending. Easy access to the office, this info@c2c.ca.gov. We check it every day. A great way to get in touch with the office. And back
thank
to
you for
you.
that, Mary Kay. Okay, no other comments in public, no other comments in the rooms from that silence. I think we have a motion and a second. And I'll ask you, Mary Kate, to please perform a roll call.
Member Payne.
Aye.
Member Gonzalez Vasquez.
Aye.
Member Ohanian.
Aye.
Member Romero.
Aye.
Member Vu.
Yes.
With 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Fabulous, wonderful. Well, that is the bulk of our work done. I really appreciate that from everyone and full participation and agreement on things. The next item for us is agenda item 6, general public comment. Mary Kate, let's go through it.
Perfect. So if there's anybody in the audience, excuse me, sorry, we'll start with members first. No one here in Sacramento. Seeing none in our remote locations. So looking to our Zoom room, if there's anybody joining us virtually via Zoom, if you'd like to generally comment, please feel free to raise your hand. I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time. And seeing no change in status, we can close public comment.
Thank you very much. Now we will take ourselves to item number 7, and this is for public comment for future agenda items for this committee only. So this is open to members and the public. Let me do it with members first. Anybody have suggestions for future agenda items for this committee's deliberations? Seeing none in the room, Mary Kate, will you do the public portion, please?
Wonderful. So if seeing none in the room, confirming none in Sacramento, so we're closing that, we'll open up with Zoom. If you would like to raise your hand, comment on this agenda item, please feel free to do so at this time. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'll give it another moment. Seeing no change in status, we can close public comment on this future agenda item.
Fabulous. That brings us to the end of our formal activities. I want to thank everyone who joined us today, and I want to specifically call out and thank our 5 committee members. What you've signed up for is a lot, and so I'm sure the team really appreciates that. I want to also thank the team for doing an extraordinary amount of work and getting us ready for this conversation. As a reminder, the advisory board member applications will be released on the C2C website on Monday, April 29th, and they'll be due by May 17th. I want to encourage any members of the public who are listening or reading about us to go to apply. And I look forward to reading everyone's applications in the coming weeks. Our next committee meeting will take place on Wednesday, June 26th. It'll be a hybrid meeting with a physical location in Sacramento and also remote locations. And there will be ample opportunity for people to join virtually. With that, the hour of 12:49 having arrived, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned and thank you all and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.